Part 1. The Contempt of Commander Vexer. Commander Vexer stood tall and imposing on the bridge of the dark spear, his six-fingered hands clasped tightly behind his back, his mandibles clicking with disdain. His golden eyes narrowed as he gazed through the massive viewport, watching the gleaming white silhouette of the human hospital ship, Mercy's Light, drift silently through the vast void of space. The ship, shining like a beacon of hope, was an affront to everything that the Dominion stood for. Mercy's Light, such an ironic name, Vexer thought, his sharp teeth bared in contempt. The ship was massive, a warship-sized vessel emblazoned with the universal medical symbol, a red cross. To most species, it was a symbol of healing, of mercy. But to Vexer, it was a mockery of everything the Dominion had worked for, the relentless pursuit of strength, dominance, and control over the stars. He sneered at the sight, the mere presence of the human vessel filling him with disgust. His lips curled as he spoke, the sound of his voice dripping with venom. "Look at them," he growled, his voice thick with contempt as he turned to his bridge crew. A warship-sized vessel dedicated to healing. What a waste of resources. Lieutenant Commander Kara Wren shifted uncomfortably at her station. She had seen Vexer angry before, but this felt different. His hatred for the humans ran deep, an unshakable belief that they were weak, that their empathy was a flaw, not a strength. He had never been one to respect the humans, especially since their rapid rise in the galaxy. They were the new players in the cosmic game, young, unpolished, and too idealistic for his taste. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Kara Wren spoke hesitantly, her voice betraying a hint of caution. "The vessel is currently treating wounded from the Centauri conflict. There are over 2,000 patients aboard, including civilians from 12 different species." Vexer's mandibles clicked again, this time in disgust. He waved her off, his sharp eyes still fixed on the view of Mercy's Light. "And that is precisely why humans will never dominate the galaxy, Kara," he spat, his voice filled with venom. "They waste their technological prowess on compassion." The word compassion was spat out like poison, as though it physically repulsed him. "Their potential is squandered on healing when they could be using it to conquer, to rule." Through the view screen, Vexer watched as small transport ships docked and departed from Mercy's Light, each one carrying more wounded to be treated by the humans' advanced medical technology. The sight only intensified his bitterness. "Technology," he muttered under his breath, "that could be used for warfare, for conquest, for achieving greatness among the stars. But no, they choose to waste it on the sick and the injured." How typical of humans. Behind him, his bridge crew remained silent. They had long since learned to keep their thoughts to themselves when Vexer was in one of these moods. The commander had made his feelings about the humans abundantly clear in the past. They were beneath the Dominion, benevolent fools who believed in the noble idea of helping others. It was a foolishness that would ultimately lead to their downfall, Vexer believed. "Do you see them?" Vexer's voice was low, almost a growl. "Humanity. They'll never understand what it takes to truly conquer the galaxy. Compassion doesn't build empires, power does." He turned sharply to face his bridge crew, his eyes flashing with the cold fury of a predator. "They have everything at their fingertips, technology, resources, potential, and yet they squander it on this." He pointed toward Mercy's Light, as though it were a blight on the stars. "If they had the courage to see the galaxy for what it truly is, a place of survival of the fittest, they might one day become something more than a nuisance." Lieutenant Commander Kara Wren's eyes flickered to her console as she processed Vexer's words. It wasn't the first time she had heard him speak like this. His hatred for humanity ran deep, but even she had to admit that there was something compelling about the Dominion's brutal philosophy of strength and dominance. Still, she couldn't shake the image of the wounded civilians being carried onto the hospital ship, the lives being saved, the compassion shown. Her copper-scaled skin tinged with discomfort as she hesitated, unsure if she should challenge her commanding officer. "Commander," she began, choosing her words carefully, Perhaps it's not so much about conquest as it is about balance. Their ships are not built for war, but that doesn't mean they are weak." She glanced at Vexer, almost daring to speak the unspoken. "Maybe they choose mercy because they can afford to, Commander. They have the power to make that choice." Vexor's eyes narrowed and his mandibles clicked again, this time in anger. His lip curled as he turned sharply to face her. Balance? He spat. Balance is for those who lack the strength to take what they want. They've built their empire on nothing. Their strength is a facade, an illusion. Wait until they face a real enemy, someone who understands the true nature of the universe. Vexor's eyes returned to the view screen, watching as yet another transport ship docked with Mercy's light, its hatch opening to reveal more wounded. He felt an overwhelming sense of disgust. The humans, in their misguided efforts to help, were only making themselves vulnerable. And the galaxy would see that vulnerability for what it was, a fatal weakness. He sneered. Let them play their games. The galaxy will learn what happens when they mistake mercy for power. Part 2. The cold calculation of war. The bridge of the Dark Spear was bathed in the cold, unfeeling light of distant stars as Commander Vexor paced back and forth, his mind sharp and calculating. His six-fingered hands clenched and unclenched, betraying the tension beneath his composed exterior. Lieutenant Commander Kara Wren remained at her station, her copper scales reflecting the dim lights of the command console. Blake Chen, the tactical officer, stood to her left, nervously glancing at Vexor, who was fuming in silence. The hum of the ship's systems filled the air, but it was a mere backdrop to the simmering anger in Vexor's chest. What do we know about Mercy's light? Vexor finally spoke, his voice low but carrying an edge of menace that made his crew stiffen. Kara Wren glanced at her console, flicking through data on the human vessel. The ship is currently treating the wounded from the Centauri conflict, sir. There are over 2,000 patients aboard, including civilians from 12 different species. It's one of the largest medical operations ever conducted in this region of space. Vexor's mandibles clicked in disbelief, his gaze flickering back to the view screen. He saw Mercy's light, its pristine hull gleaming like a blinding star. The very sight of it made his stomach churn. So, they're treating the Centauri? Pathetic, he muttered. His voice dropped lower, filled with venom. They waste their resources on this, healing, rather than using it for war. They could be using that technology for true greatness, conquest, power, but instead they choose to play nursemaid to the universe's wounded. Blake Chen, who had been standing in silence, took a careful step forward. His four eyes blinked in sequence, a subtle sign of discomfort among his species. Sir, the Centauri conflict is one of the largest and most violent wars in this sector. Their involvement is humanitarian, not a sign of weakness. They're trying to maintain peace, at least in their corner of the galaxy. Vexor let out a harsh laugh, the sound scraping like a jagged rock against the silence of the bridge. Peace? Peace is for the weak. The galaxy doesn't bend to kindness, Blake. It bends to strength. These humans, they're soft in the ways that matter, and it will be their undoing. His eyes gleamed coldly as he turned to face the tactical officer. What they don't understand is that mercy is a vulnerability. They're exposing themselves, and they don't even realize it. Kara Wren shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her thoughts racing. She had always been loyal to Vexor, but something about his obsession with destroying the Mercy's light didn't sit right with her. Her people had always valued the balance between strength and wisdom, and while the Dominion had always conquered with might, Kara had seen firsthand the sacrifices that the humans made for others, sacrifices that spoke of a strength beyond brute force. But she kept her thoughts to herself. She had learned long ago that questioning Vexor was dangerous, especially when he was set on a course of action, and right now his mind was set. He glanced over at her, sensing her hesitation. "You have something to say, Lieutenant Commander?" Kara stiffened, her voice steady as she answered. I don't think the humans see mercy as a weakness, Commander. They believe in healing because it's the right thing to do. And if we're honest, we could learn from that. Vexor's eyes hardened, his mandibles snapping in irritation. "Do not mistake their naivety for wisdom, Kara," he said coldly. "Their compassion blinds them to the true nature of this galaxy, and when you're blind, you're vulnerable." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "This vulnerability needs to be exploited. If we strike at Mercy's light, we'll send a message to every species in the galaxy. We will show them that kindness does not protect them. We'll remind them that it is power that rules the stars, not mercy." Blake Chen's voice quivered slightly. Sir, you mean to attack a hospital ship? The political ramifications. Politics, Vexer barked, his voice rising. Politics is for those who don't have the strength to act. The Mercy's light is nothing but a symbol of everything that is wrong with this galaxy. It's a message to every species that you can survive without being strong, without being ruthless. I'm going to correct that. Kara Wren hesitated, her mind racing. But attacking a hospital ship would make us no better than the enemy. It would be an act of pure malice. Vexer shot her a cold, hard look. It will make us stronger, Kara. Mercy is a weakness, and the galaxy will see it for what it is. If we want to send a message, this is the way. He turned back to Blake Chen, his voice suddenly quieter, more calculating. We'll strike at their core, hit them where they think they are safest, their medical bay. It's the heart of their operation, and if we destroy it, we'll show them that their compassion doesn't protect them. Blake Chen swallowed nervously, but he nodded, inputting the coordinates into his console. Understood, Commander. Kara Wren's mind raced. She had always known Vexer was ruthless, but this, destroying a hospital ship filled with the wounded, the sick, and civilians, it was a step too far, even for him. She had never questioned him before, but now, as she watched him give the orders, something deep within her stirred. Was this the right path? Could they truly afford to destroy what they had already won? But her questions were drowned out by Vexer's cold command. Prepare the weapons, Blake. Target their medical bay. I want them to know exactly what we're destroying. Blake Chen hesitated only for a moment before he started inputting the targeting coordinates. The crew around them moved with the chilling precision of soldiers who had long ago accepted that they would follow their commander's orders, no matter the cost. No one spoke as the dark spear readied its weapons. The atmosphere in the bridge was thick with tension. The next move would change everything. As Vexer gazed at Mercy's light one last time, he felt a twisted satisfaction building in his chest. We will remind them that the galaxy belongs to those who understand strength, not to those who waste their time on compassion. The weapons officer's voice cut through the silence. Weapons locked on target, Commander. Vexer's cold smile spread across his face. Fire. Part 3. The decision to attack. The tension on the Dark Spear's bridge was suffocating as Commander Vexer stood before his crew, a chilling focus in his golden eyes. His fingers drummed impatiently against the armrest of his command chair as he stared out at the helpless figure of Mercy's light drifting through space. His mind was set, the plan clear in his cold, calculating thoughts. Every action had led to this moment. Lieutenant Commander Wren, he called out sharply, his voice cold as ice. Target the medical bay. I want them to feel the full weight of our message. No mercy. Kara Wren hesitated. For just a split second, she thought of speaking up, of warning him about the consequences. But she knew better. This was Vexer. His mind was made up, and there was nothing that could change it. Blake Chen, the tactical officer, shifted uneasily beside her, his four eyes blinking rapidly as he began to input the coordinates into the ship's targeting system. The silence was deafening. Vexer had always been a ruthless commander, but this was something else entirely. Attacking a hospital ship, a place of healing and refuge, it was a brutal decision, and it made even the hardened Dominion crew uneasy. The very idea of attacking a symbol of mercy seemed wrong. Still, the command had been given. The Dark Spear was armed and ready. Commander, Blake Chen's voice was almost a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. Are you sure about this? The repercussions? Vexer turned to him, his eyes flashing with a cold fury. There are no repercussions when you are the strongest force in the galaxy, Blake. We will do what must be done. He leaned forward in his chair, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The humans need to understand their place. Mercy is a weakness, and they will learn that today. Blake Chen swallowed hard and nodded, despite the gnawing doubt in his gut. Weapons locked, Commander, targeting the medical bay. Vexer's gaze fixed on the viewport, watching as the Mercy's light remained unaware of its impending doom. His fingers curled into fists, the anger boiling within him now turning into a twisted sense of satisfaction. Fire, Vexer ordered coldly. The sound of the Dark Spear's weapons firing echoed through the bridge like a thunderclap. The bolt of energy shot out into the darkness of space, a brilliant purple streak that seemed to slice through the void with brutal precision. The first shot hit Mercy's light directly, striking the medical bay with explosive force. The ship's hull cracked open like an eggshell under the blast, the force of the impact tearing through its protective outer layers. Atmosphere vented in a violent plume, and emergency force fields scrambled into place, trying to contain the damage, but the ship was already beginning to break apart. Vexor allowed himself a grim smile, savoring the destruction. This was his message to the humans. Their mercy had led them to this. He could almost hear their screams of confusion and fear as their sanctuary was shattered. The thought pleased him. "You see?" Vexor sneered, turning to his crew. "This is what happens when you don't understand the nature of the galaxy. This is the price of kindness." Yet even as the dark spear continued its assault, a chilling sense of unease began to settle on the bridge. Vexor didn't notice it at first, too lost in his own satisfaction, but something was wrong. The humans had always been quick to retaliate, but this time there was no response. Nothing from Mercy's light, no desperate call for help, no signs of a counterattack. It was as if they had already resigned themselves to their fate. Blake Chen glanced nervously at his console, then at Vexor. "Sir, we've inflicted critical damage on their medical bay. Their shields are failing." "Good," Vexor interrupted, his voice cold and firm. "Target their engines next. They need to be completely incapacitated. No one gets away from this." Part 4. The Destruction of Mercy's Light. The Dark Spear fired again, its weapons lancing through space with brutal efficiency. The next blast hit Mercy's light directly on its engines, and the ship lurched violently, its trajectory thrown off. Sparks and debris floated into space as the massive hospital ship began to list, unable to maintain its orbit. Emergency lights flickered across the hull, casting an eerie, dim glow on the wreckage of the ship's medical bay. Inside the hospital ship, chaos erupted. Medical staff scrambled to tend to the wounded, their efforts now desperately focused on saving lives amid the destruction. Human doctors, nurses, and robots worked tirelessly to stabilize patients, moving them into emergency evacuation pods. Some of the wounded patients, still unconscious and unaware of what was happening, were hurriedly transferred into makeshift cryogenic stasis chambers. Others were being shielded from the debris by the medical staff, who put themselves in harm's way to protect those they had sworn to care for. The sounds of distress echoed through the corridors, muffled by the structural damage, as cries for help mixed with the whirring of medical droids. In the chaos, a broadcast began transmitting from Mercy's light. It was a distress signal, a cry for help, but Vexor watched it coldly, unmoved by the desperation in the human voices. "This is Mercy's light," a human voice crackled through the comms. "We are under attack. We have sustained critical damage to our medical bay. We have hundreds of patients in critical care, including children. We need assistance. Please." Vexor's cold smile never wavered. He reached over to his console and silenced the message. "Their pleas are meaningless," he muttered. "They've chosen to play at mercy. Let them feel the consequences." The Dark Spear didn't stop. Vexor's orders were clear. The ship must be annihilated. "Target their central core," he barked. "Finish this. We'll make sure they understand the true meaning of strength." As the Dark Spear prepared to fire its final devastating blow, Vexor turned back to the viewport, watching the crippled hospital ship with a sense of grim satisfaction. The destruction was almost complete. However, as he watched the desperate evacuation efforts unfold in front of him, a nagging thought began to surface, one that he quickly pushed aside. The humans, so focused on their ideals, so dedicated to saving lives, had done nothing to provoke the Dominion. Yet here he was, erasing them from the stars. But no, he quickly reassured himself. The humans would learn. They would understand that their compassion made them weak, and in doing so, they would become a lesson for the rest of the galaxy. A lesson that no one would forget. With that, Vexor gave the order, his voice cold and unfeeling. Fire at will. The final blast of energy tore through Mercy's light's central core, shattering the ship in a flash of brilliant light. The once pristine hull of the hospital ship disintegrated under the force of the blast, and the stars beyond were briefly obscured by the debris that followed. Vexor turned away, his face expressionless, as the crew around him remained still, processing what had just transpired. The Mercy's light, a symbol of hope, healing, and compassion, was no more. But Vexor remained unmoved. To him, the destruction was nothing more than a statement. The galaxy would now understand. The humans would learn that their mercy was a liability, and the Dark Spear would stand as the harbinger of that lesson. Unbeknownst to him, however, the consequences of his decision were already set in motion, consequences that would change the course of galactic history. Part 5. The Revelation of Human Power. The eerie silence on the Dark Spear's bridge was shattered by a sharp beeping from the tactical console. Lieutenant Commander Kara Wren was the first to react, her eyes widening as she quickly scanned the incoming data. "Commander Vexor," she said, her voice tight with disbelief, "I'm detecting multiple quantum signatures, massive energy readings. They're coming out of the quantum tunnels, everywhere." Vexor, who had been standing by the viewport, still relishing the destruction of Mercy's light, turned sharply at her words. His eyes narrowed in irritation. "What are you talking about, Wren? Are you trying to suggest that the humans have—" "Sir, these signatures aren't from any known human ships," Blake Chen interjected, his voice full of astonishment. "These ships, they're unlike anything we've seen before. They're huge, and their energy readings are off the scale. It's unlike anything in the human fleet's capabilities." Vexor's eyes narrowed with suspicion, his mandibles clicking as he walked toward the tactical station. "Impossible," he muttered. "The humans can barely manage space travel. What technology could they possibly have?" But before he could finish his thought, the answer presented itself with a terrifying clarity. From the view screen, massive ships, sleek, angular, and bristling with weaponry, began to materialize, emerging from the newly formed quantum breach points in every direction. The Dark Spear was surrounded, trapped in the vast expanse of space, as more and more human warships came into view. The ships were dark, almost liquid in their movement, their angular frames shifting in ways that defied conventional engineering. The energy signatures emanating from them were unlike anything the Dominion had encountered, and as they formed a tight perimeter around the Dark Spear, Vexor's eyes widened with horror. These ships weren't human, at least not in any way the Dominion had ever expected. "Blake," Vexor barked, his voice laced with panic, "run a scan on those vessels. I want to know everything about them. What are we facing?" Blake's fingers flew over his console, his mind racing. He was no stranger to military strategy, but this was something entirely beyond him. "Commander, these ships are using a form of technology we have no records of. They have the ability to manipulate space-time, much like their quantum shears, but on a massive scale. The power levels are staggering. These ships can erase entire planets with pinpoint precision." Vexor's heart skipped a beat as the gravity of the situation finally hit him. He had underestimated the humans. He had believed that Mercy's light, their hospital ship, was a symbol of weakness, a misguided relic of a species too soft to understand true power. But now, as these human warships surrounded the Dark Spear, Vexor realized how wrong he had been. These were no ordinary ships. The humans had been preparing for this moment, preparing for war, not with the primitive tools of their past, but with advanced, incomprehensible technology that could shatter entire worlds with the flick of a switch. "Commander," Blake's voice broke through his thoughts. "The quantum breach points. They're still opening. More ships are coming through. There's no way we can engage them all." Vexor's fists clenched, his mind racing to adapt. "We've made our move," he muttered, a cold resolve settling over him. "Now we face the consequences." Part 6. The Human Wrath Unleashed. The space around the Dark Spear crackled with tension as the human fleet, dozens of ships, perhaps hundreds, closed in, their weapons primed, their formations flawless. It wasn't a show of force, it was something far more dangerous. The humans weren't here to engage in a traditional battle. They were here to deliver a message, one that Vexor wasn't ready to hear. The comms channel crackled, and a voice cut through the static, a voice that was cold, calm, and utterly devoid of mercy. "This is Admiral Sarah Hawthorne of the Earth Vengeance Fleet," the voice said, clear as crystal. "Commander Vexor, you have made a grave mistake." Vexor stiffened, his eyes narrowing as he turned toward the comms officer. "Answer it, now," he snapped. The comms officer's hands trembled as he connected the transmission, and Admiral Hawthorne's image flickered to life on the screen. She was a human, a woman in a military uniform, her expression stern, her eyes sharp with focus. Behind her, the massive fleet of human warships loomed, their sleek forms an unyielding reminder of what Vexor was up against. "You are the commander of the Dark Spear," Hawthorne continued, her tone unwavering, "and you thought you could attack Mercy's light without consequence. You were wrong. The humans you so foolishly underestimated have been preparing for this confrontation for centuries. We chose not to wage war for a long time, not because we are weak, but because we mastered the art of war long ago." Vexor's chest tightened with a strange mix of fear and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" he hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're just a primitive species, barely a blip on the galactic radar. What could you possibly do to us?" Admiral Hawthorne's eyes flashed with cold fury, and her lips curled into a thin smile. "You chose to strike at Mercy's light, a ship meant to heal and help. You assumed that our compassion made us weak, that our focus on healing made us helpless. But what you failed to understand is this. We built our civilization on healing because we mastered the art of destruction long before that. You see, Commander, we didn't build our hospitals because we were too soft to fight. We built them because we were too powerful to ignore our responsibility to do better." The words hit Vexor like a punch to the gut. He had assumed that humans, with their compassion and their focus on medicine, were soft. But now, as he faced the enormous human fleet closing in on him, he saw the truth. The humans had been preparing for this moment. They had turned their capacity for destruction into something far more terrifying, an unstoppable force of precision, capable of erasing entire systems, of wiping away anything that stood in their way. "You have no idea what you've unleashed," Hawthorne continued, her voice like ice. "We will make you understand that mercy is not a weakness. It is a strength. And now, you will feel the full weight of our wrath." Vexor's thoughts spiraled. The Dark Spear was a mighty warship, but even with its formidable firepower, it stood no chance against the might of the Earth Vengeance fleet. The humans had been biding their time, watching and waiting. They had seen the Mercy's light destroyed, and now they were prepared to show Vexor exactly what happened when someone dared to challenge the strength of the human spirit. "Commander Vexor," Hawthorne's voice echoed one last time, "your galaxy isn't just ours for the taking. We've earned it. And now, it's time for you to learn why we chose healing instead of war. Prepare to face the consequences of your actions." The transmission cut off, leaving Vexor standing in stunned silence. The hum of the Dark Spear's system seemed suddenly hollow, as if the ship itself were unsure of what came next. The enemy ships, once distant and abstract, were now closing in on him. And Vexor realized, too late, that he had made a critical miscalculation. The humans were no longer the weak, idealistic species he had once thought them to be. They were a power in the galaxy, one that could erase entire worlds with the click of a button. The Dark Spear was surrounded, trapped, and Vexor knew that there was nowhere to run. He had awakened a force far greater than he could have ever imagined, and the human's wrath was about to be unleashed. Part 7. Humanity's Demonstration of Power. The eerie stillness on the Dark Spear's bridge was shattered by a low hum, a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the ship. Vexor stood frozen, his golden eyes wide with disbelief, as the human fleet moved into position. The magnitude of their presence was undeniable, but what came next left him breathless. From the viewport, he watched as the human ships fired their first volleys, not with explosive force or blinding energy beams, but with a strange, otherworldly precision. A pulse of dark energy surged from one of the warships, and in an instant, a massive Dominion weapon platform, one that had been stationed at the outer rim of the Dominion's controlled space, was simply gone. There was no explosion, no debris. The structure simply vanished, as though it had never existed in the first place. Vexor's throat went dry as his eyes narrowed in confusion. What just happened?" he muttered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Blake Chen, still pale from the shock of the ambush, was already scanning the data. "Commander, it looks like the humans are using some form of quantum shear technology. The weapon's energy doesn't destroy matter. It removes it. It's as though they're editing reality itself, surgically excising structures from existence without a trace. Vexor's jaw clenched as he processed the information. You mean to say they're rewriting the fabric of space-time? Blake nodded grimly. That's what it appears to be, sir. It's like nothing we've ever encountered. Vexor clenched his fists. The humans were not simply engaging in warfare. They were performing an operation. They were using the very laws of the universe as their scalpel, eliminating any trace of the Dominion's military infrastructure with surgical precision. And with each passing moment, Vexor watched in helpless rage as his empire's strength crumbled before him. The first strike was followed by more. Within seconds, weapon platforms that had once stood as stalwart defenses for Dominion space simply ceased to exist. The human ships, each one sleek and efficient, seemed to move through the space around them with terrifying grace. Every attack was calculated, every movement deliberate. They weren't fighting a war, they were performing surgery on reality itself. Sir, they're targeting our shipyards now, Kara Wren reported, her voice shaky with shock. The entire sector's infrastructure, gone. Our ability to build more ships is vanishing before our eyes. Vexor's vision tunneled as he watched the human ships continue their work. He was paralyzed by the sight of his empire being dismantled, piece by piece, as though the humans were erasing all the tools of war that had taken centuries to build. The Dark Spear's weapons were locked and ready, but even in the face of such destruction, Vexor knew that there was nothing they could do. Commander, Blake Chen whispered, his voice faltering, they're dismantling everything we've built, our weapons, our stations, our power. His words hung heavy in the air. Without our military infrastructure, we can't fight them. Vexor's mind raced, but he could not find a way to counter this. He had always believed that might made right, that power would win the day. But the humans, with their strange and terrifying technology, had shown him something more potent than sheer military force. They had shown him control over reality itself. And as the Dark Spear remained helpless in the center of the storm, Vexor realized something far worse. The humans had already won. Part 8. The Fall of the Dominion. Vexor's hands trembled as he watched, helpless, as the human ships continued their methodical destruction of the Dominion's military might. The shipyards, once a symbol of the Dominion's ability to create warships in endless numbers, were now nothing more than blackened voids in space. The massive orbital weapons platforms that had been key to defending Dominion territory had been erased, their massive structures simply gone, leaving no sign they had ever existed. He could feel the panic rising in his chest. The core of his empire's strength, the very thing that had made the Dominion a feared power, was being stripped away. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. What is happening? Vexor asked through gritted teeth, though he already knew the answer. The humans were dismantling everything. The Dark Spear was surrounded by ships that moved with terrifying precision, dismantling entire systems, erasing critical infrastructure without a single shot fired. Kara Wren's voice cut through his thoughts. Sir, they're not just targeting our weapons and shipyards. They're dismantling our entire military capability, our command stations, our strategic points of power. Without these, we're completely vulnerable. Vexor's vision blurred as the reality of the situation hit him. The Dark Spear, his pride, his symbol of the Dominion's power, was surrounded by ships capable of erasing entire worlds, their weapons surgically precise, their intentions clear. The humans had achieved something he never could have imagined. They had destroyed the Dominion's ability to wage war, not by brute force, but by erasing the very fabric of the Dominion's military power. Vexor felt his empire slipping from his grasp. His strength, his entire belief system, had been based on one fundamental truth, that power was won through warfare, through force. But now, with his military infrastructure destroyed and his fleets decimated, he realized that the humans had not won through brute force. They had shown that true power lay in restraint. They didn't destroy us with weapons, Vexor murmured, almost to himself. They disarmed us. And without our strength, without our ability to conquer, we have nothing. Blake Chen's voice was barely audible. It's over, Commander. Our fleet is disbanded. Our resources are wiped out. The Dominion, we can't fight anymore. We've lost. Vexor's heart pounded as the crushing realization settled over him. He had been so certain of his power, so sure that the galaxy was a place where only the strongest survived. He had thought mercy was a weakness, that compassion would lead to destruction. But he had failed to see the true strength in humanity. The humans had built their empire on healing, not because they were weak, but because their strength was so overwhelming that they could afford to choose mercy. He watched in disbelief as his empire, once a beacon of military might, crumbled before his eyes. The Dominion's greatest strength, their military, had been dismantled, not by force, but by an advanced technology that bypassed everything Vexor had relied on for centuries. In the cold silence of the Dark Spear, Vexor realized too late that humanity's compassion had never been a weakness. It had been their greatest strength, the strength to heal, to choose mercy, to build instead of destroy. And it was this strength, so immense, that had undone everything the Dominion had built. The humans hadn't just conquered the Dominion, they had shown that the galaxy could be ruled through restraint, not through mindless warfare. Vexor closed his eyes, his mind swirling with the finality of it all. The humans had won, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Part 9. The Final Message from Earth. The Dark Spear hung motionless in space, surrounded by the implacable might of the Earth Vengeance Fleet. Vexor's eyes, once burning with the fire of conquest, were now dull, his mind consumed by the overwhelming reality that his empire was gone, stripped away by the precision of humanity's technology. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over. The Dark Spear was a relic, an obsolete warship in the face of the overwhelming human fleet. In the silence of the bridge, Admiral Sarah Hawthorne's voice crackled once more over the comms. Her tone was calm, unyielding, and it sent a chill through Vexor's body as it reverberated through the hull of the Dark Spear. "Commander Vexor, this is the final message from Earth," she said, her voice sharp and cutting through the thick silence. "You have chosen to strike at our mercy's light, a symbol of our commitment to healing, to saving lives. You thought it was a weakness, a folly, something to exploit. But you have failed to see the truth. You have failed to understand why we do what we do." Vexor's breath caught in his throat, the words cutting deeper than any weapon. He could hear the faint hum of his ship's damaged systems as the humans continued their deadly silence, their presence now a looming inevitability. "The hospitals we've built were not constructed out of weakness," Hawthorne continued, her voice unwavering. "They were built because we have learned, over millennia, to restrain ourselves. We have the strength to destroy. We have the technology to annihilate. But we have chosen mercy, not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to control our power." Vexor clenched his fists, his mind racing, but he was still unable to escape the truth of her words. His empire, his vision of strength through conquest, had been crushed not by the might of human weapons, but by their restraint, their ability to choose to do no harm. "We built Mercy's light because we once were capable of unimaginable destruction," Hawthorne's voice continued. "But we have chosen not to use our power that way. Our hospitals, our ships, our technologies, these are the tools of a species that knows the price of violence, the cost of war, and we will not make the same mistake again." Vexor closed his eyes, his body trembling with a mix of rage and awe. He had always seen power as something defined by the strength to conquer, to dominate. The humans had built their entire society on the opposite premise, not through destruction, but through healing. The depth of their strength was something he had never understood, and now it was too late. "Your surrender is meaningless, Commander." Hawthorne's voice broke through his thoughts, cold and final. "You are not the first to misunderstand humanity's true power, and you won't be the last. The galaxy will remember this day. They will remember what happens when you mistake compassion for weakness." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vexor in the silence of his own failure. Around him, his crew remained frozen, as though caught in a collective disbelief. The Dark Spear was a tomb, a reminder of everything the Dominion had lost. And then, Vexor realized, this was not just a victory for humanity. It was a message to the galaxy, to every empire, every species, every race that had ever believed in power through destruction. The humans had shown them all a new way, a way that had reshaped the very concept of strength. Part 10. A New Galactic Order. In the weeks following the fall of the Dominion, the galaxy underwent a profound transformation. The wreckage of the Dark Spear and countless other Dominion vessels floated in the dark expanse of space, mere remnants of an empire that had once claimed the stars. The human fleet, with its precision and its mercy, became the new symbol of strength, not through war, but through an unprecedented demonstration of control and restraint. As Earth's message reverberated across the galaxy, the perception of humanity began to change. Once considered a young and inexperienced species, they were now seen as the guardians of a new order, a force not to be feared for their ability to conquer, but for their ability to heal and to choose when to wield their incredible power. Mercy's light, once a symbol of human compassion and healing, became an emblem of something far more powerful. The ship, now rebuilt and more fortified than ever, carried the legacy of humanity's strength and restraint wherever it went. It became a beacon for those who sought peace, a reminder that mercy was not a sign of weakness, but the ultimate expression of power. The galaxy's species, many of them previously wary or even hostile to the human race, began to change their stance. Empires that had once viewed humanity with suspicion began to establish diplomatic relationships, redirecting military budgets to healthcare, research, and technology that could emulate the human commitment to healing. The idea of using hospitals as a front for strength spread across the stars, with species desperate to learn from humanity's example. But not all were quick to embrace this new order. The Dominion's collapse left behind a power vacuum, and some factions, especially those still loyal to the old ways, plotted in secret. But the message was clear. No one would dare attack a hospital ship again. As for Commander Vexor, he was no longer a commander. He was a prisoner, one of the last remnants of a lost empire, now helpless in the face of humanity's might. He was transferred to a human medical facility, his body broken and his mind shattered, to undergo a procedure unlike any he had ever imagined. Vexor spent the rest of his life in that medical bay, subjected to a form of treatment that only humans could devise, a treatment not of healing, but of justice. Through quantum surgical techniques, he was forced to experience every moment of pain and suffering he had caused during his time as a Dominion commander. The humans did not kill him. They did not destroy him. They made him feel each agony, each scream of the innocent he had condemned. They showed him the price of cruelty and the weight of the lives lost in the wake of his decisions. This was not punishment. This was treatment, and it would continue for the rest of his natural life. The galaxy, however, did not mourn the fall of the Dominion. Instead, it turned its eyes to the new galactic order, one where strength was not measured by weapons or warships, but by the ability to choose when to heal and when to spare. Mercy's light and its fleet became the standard by which all others were judged. The age of destructive conquest had ended, and a new era had begun, an era defined not by power, but by the ultimate strength of mercy. And as Vexor's name faded into the annals of history, humanity's legacy grew, a reminder to the galaxy. Compassion, when wielded by those who understand true power, was the greatest force the universe would ever know.